In a world where social media reigns supreme, one platform has been at the center of controversy, and that platform, TikTok. With its massive user base and Chinese-owned parent company ByteDance, the app has become a national security concern, at least in the United States. The clock is ticking in that country with a critical deadline looming. So, will TikTok find a buyer or will it face a U.S. ban? The Trump administration has extended the deadline for a second time, but the pressure is mounting. Amazon, Microsoft, and even Elon Musk have thrown their hats into the ring as potential buyers. But what does this mean for the future of social media, and what are the implications for users? So joining us now is tech journalist and ITWeb News Africa editor, Sam Mungadze, who's been following these developments and joins us now to take that conversation forward. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me. So we're talking about TikTok, and it was meant to have been banned, and I think the deadline was earlier in January, until we saw Donald Trump make a 180-degree turn from being someone who was a TikTok skeptic, if not opponent, to a supporter of TikTok. Where do things stand now in terms of talking about finding a US-based buyer for TikTok? Because it seems that's what would save TikTok from a ban in the US.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you guys. Look, I think the new development around the sale of TikTok is on Thursday. I think President Trump announced another 75-day extension, which goes up to June, to try and find a new buyer for TikTok. Because according to the U.S. government and the senators, basically, the House, they believe TikTok possesses a threat, a national concern, because of they allege that the Chinese official may gain access to its massive collection of user data, which Beijing obviously rejects. So that's where we are at the moment.
And some of the names that I mentioned, Amazon, Microsoft, and even Elon Musk, how serious are these bids, if we can call them bids, or it's just signaling at this point?
The bids are serious. Everybody wants it's because TikTok is actually it's a big deal in terms of social media. A lot of companies are benefiting from using TikTok. A lot of jobs have been created using TikTok for content creators. So everybody wants rather is looking to have a bite on TikTok. So it's something that is everybody's interested in. It's a platform that has got a future, and is a platform that people are interested in getting a bite on.
So what are the likely consequences of that attempt to get a US-based shareholder and buyer for TikTok, at least in the United States? Would that have an impact in how users experience the platform and the amount of influence that those US buyers would have in how the platform is experienced, firstly in the United States by users, but also across the globe by users around the world?
I don't think the US decision will affect the TikTok users across the world. It's just US based in that country. The rest, I think, it will remain the same. Nothing has changed, and no any other country has put any objections to TikTok, I think, at the moment. So as it stands right now, whatever happens in the US, I don't think it will affect TikTok globally.
But take me back to the concerns, the national security concerns. We live in an age where all of these apps and, the tech companies hold a massive amount of data that we freely give them. Whenever they say we use cookies, for example, that's us consenting to say, yeah, store some, different data, some personal, some peripheral in terms of our personal information. Tell me about the concerns. What is it about TikTok that concerned the United States to bring us to this point where we are talking about them insisting that it should find a US buyer or a US investor?
The real concern that they've raised is that the Chinese government will have access to user data for Americans, which may pose a threat in terms of cyber security and any other threat that data can be used against US. So that is the main issue that they've raised. That's the concern. So the concern is they're worried that the Chinese government will have access to use the data of Americans. That's the main concern.
So it suggests to me then that there's a certain regulation difficulty that the US government at least has identified that they believe cannot be handled through proper domestic regulation of how user data is handled, regardless of where the owner of the parent company is domiciled. Am I correct in reading it that way? Just broadly, as it applies to TikTok, but other social media as well, the difficulty of regulation of these companies, many of which are not domiciled in countries such as South Africa where they operate.
Look, I'm not familiar with the data laws of the US. What I can just say is I think this has just triggered a lot of questions around how people use data or social media use data and data protection. So it is something that is now triggering all social media platforms probably to try and up their game when it comes to user data protection and all those kind of things. But I can't comment on the US laws. I'm not familiar with the US 100%. Laws on data protection.
All good. Thank you. Thank you for your time and your insights this afternoon. That's ITWeb News Africa editor Sam Mungadze, who is also a tech journalist. And that brings us to the end of today's edition of The Week Ahead here on SABC News.